I'm your host, Jessica Shockley, and this is the Bold Foundations Podcast. The information shared in this podcast, Bold Foundations, is for informational and inspirational purposes only. While we discuss strategies for shifting your mindset to cultivate a more positive and fulfilling life, this podcast is not a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, or therapeutic advice. If you have specific mental health concerns or medical conditions, we encourage you to seek guidance from a qualified healthcare professional. Everyone's journey is unique, and professional support can provide personalized assistance tailored to your needs. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that myself, the host, and any guests on future or past episodes are sharing personal insights and general information, not medical or psychological advice. Always prioritize your well-being and consult a professional when necessary. Ouch! Don't let your insurance company add to the pain in your neck. It's time to lawyer up with Shockley Polino Personal Injury Attorneys. Store 727-498-8771 in your phone now. That's 727-498-8771. Offices St. Petersburg, Clearwater. On this episode of the Bold Foundations podcast, Boldly Coaching Confidence, Cristin's story. It was truly an honor to sit with Cristin, a trailblazing entrepreneur who coaches confidence to women and young girls. But beyond her workshop, she shares her story that feels relatable to us all. Listen in to be bold and confident by wearing what looks best on you. Learn the mission and importance behind coaching confidence for women and young girls. Hear how she found life tools and solutions through therapy and EMDR. Learn the difference in meaning between body acceptance versus body positivity. Hear the importance of shifting your mindset. Establish that one thing that you love about yourself. Find your inner glow. Hear discussions on prioritizing health in a way that benefits your individual body. Learn the importance of finding your community, and don't be afraid to go outside your current circle. Get another reminder that things are not happening to you, but they are happening for you. Be educated on SCAD awareness, and be confident to be your own advocate. I'm so excited today. We have Cristin Goss. Hi, Cristin.
Hey, Jess, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm so excited to have you here today. And we're in if for those of you maybe watching on YouTube, we're both in matching pink. And there's a lot of significance to this color for both of us. I am starting a women's empowerment group, and Cristin, you have already been doing so much work for women and young girls in the community, and I would love for you to share what you're doing, how that sort of ties to the color that we're wearing.
Yeah, so let me touch on the color first. And this is just my tip for women and men if you want to do that as well. But last May, I had a color analysis done and it helped me identify my season. And so I actually have it at my desk here. I have a whole palette of colors that look the best on me specifically. So it takes into consideration your skin tone, your natural hair color, and I now have this wonderful palette to go off of when I shop. And so last year, after I had it done, I kind of revamped my own branding for my business, Goss Boss, and really went full force into hot pink, which I'm wearing, cobalt blue, kind of that royal blue, and leaning into the color palette for my branding as well. So that's the significance of the pink. It was kind of like for a lot of my years, as a child and even into young adulthood, leaning into wearing all black because I had this notion that it was slimming or flattering, and also the fact that I just wanted to hide and not really be noticed. So now leaning into my much more confident self, I embrace the hot pink and the bright colors that come along with my winter season. So that's the significance of the pink for me. But I'm happy to see that you showed up in your pink to support.
Yes. And I love
Um,
the backstory on that. I feel that what you just mentioned about the color is kind of probably bleed into our conversation a bit today.
yeah, for sure. There's a lot of you know, things that I pull from my personal journey, especially over the last 2.5 years, especially that bleed into my business as well. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cristin Goss. My business is Goss Boss, and I am a brand photographer and confidence coach for women. And within the last year and a half, have started creating programs and workshops for young girls as well. And I was asked actually last week from one of the attendees of my workshop what or how I started getting into empowering women. And I thought it was such an interesting question, the way she framed it. And I kind of like my initial response wanted to be, well, I've always done that. And the truth is I have. I feel even from a young age, like even going through, the teenage years and young adulthood, like in high school, my friends called me mom because I was just very mothering and very, concerned and wanted to make sure that everyone was taken care of. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but I was kind of laying the groundwork to become what I am today. Um, but I think working as a brand photographer, I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of women over the last almost 9 years in business. And a lot of that was a lot of really great market research and having conversations with women and learning about the insecurities that they have, the struggles that they have with their confidence centered around body image and, this idea that I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy, um, was was a constant theme that I saw from my clients. And these are women that are some in the C-suite level. These are entrepreneurs starting their business from the ground up. These are, working corporate professionals, just really smart, amazing, accomplished women that were still struggling internally. And that affected the way that they showed up not only on camera, like with me in the studio, but also personally and professionally. Having conversations with them that they had, ideas for new businesses or things that they wanted to do in life. And just this lack of confidence was really holding them back. And so I just decided, in early 2023, I was going to create programs that helped women become more comfortable and confident on camera, but also in their everyday lives. And so pulling from that to really help them as professionals working, um, but also in relationships, with their partner, with their friends, with their family. It's all interconnected. And so I just decided, based on my personal journey and things that I went through, I was going to stand up and be the voice for these women and, kind of help them as a guide, as a mentor, as someone who doesn't have all the answers. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm walking alongside of you. And I think that is something that is kind of missing from the narrative that we have as women now in 2025.
And I think what's really extraordinary about what you're doing too is a lot of us, we start to feel these insecurities at childhood, and you don't just empower women. These workshops that you're putting on are also for young girls to come. And what an amazing thing to learn how to have self-confidence at such a young age. I mean, imagine what that's going to do for them in their life.
I hope so. And a lot of the motivation behind creating programming for young girls is thinking back to myself at those ages and thinking, wow, this would have been so great for me to have, for me to have a strong woman stand up in front of me and say, listen, like I've been through it. I've been bullied. I've lacked confidence. I've had body image issues, but here are some tips and tricks that have helped me as an adult that you can start applying in your life now as a young girl. And, hopefully you'll have a better go at this life's journey because you have that knowledge and you have that support. What is also important to me when I create the programs for young girls is to do them as a mother-daughter experience. And so really cultivating that strong relationship that can exist for mothers and daughters. And I don't think for a lot of us as millennial women was was a part of our lives for a lot of different reasons, and I think now as millennial women, we have an opportunity to break that generational trauma or curse, whatever you want to call it, and say like going forward, our children are going to uh, find safety and security in our relationship and be able to be open and have the tough conversations of life, and say, Mom, I'm feeling, XYZ. What do you think? And then as a mom, you can say, listen, I've been in your shoes. Here's how I handled it, or here's how I would have handled it. Um, really cultivating that strong mother-daughter relationship is important for me as well. And that's something that, as a mother to a 7-year-old girl, I just felt really compelled again to be the voice, to be the courageous person that stands up and say, this needs to change, and here's how I think I can do it.
Yeah, I think it's such incredible work because also as a mother with girls and for my son too, but it specifically was a thought that I had when my first daughter was born. The number one thing I want to be able to instill in my daughter is confidence because at that age, I could look back with more of a clear lens and see the paths that I walked down, the situations that I put myself in that weren't great were because I didn't have enough confidence to stand up for myself and say, that's not for me.
Yeah, the deliverable, if you will, of what I want for these young girls with the programming is self-confidence. And true confidence means that you feel confident in yourself without without the external validation that so often we seek in life, whether we're young or whether we are now grown adults. It's really about feeling in yourself that you are confident, that you are worthy, that you are capable, that you are enough. Like those are the affirmations that I want these girls to take with them and to really work on, because chasing after that external validation is like running on a hamster wheel. Like it's just you think you get it from here, but it's not quite what you're looking for, and then you go over here and try to seek it from over there. And you know, I really want these girls to grow up with a sense of self, and that is something that, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us as women struggled with. And it just is not the narrative that we heard growing up, whether it was from our close environment, family and friends, or whether it was from, the mainstream media. We didn't have social media growing up, thank goodness. But of course, now that's another thing to worry about and to experience for these girls growing up. So, I think just equipping them with a sense of self and that true self-confidence is the best tool that they can have.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be so incredible to see these girls later in life and how they're impacted from the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I hope to, you know, check back in every once in a while with the moms specifically, and see how, if there were some issues that they had to tackle since working together, or, if there's some positive feedback or experiences, and also negative ones too. I mean, I think I now am a resource for moms and girls. I had a call late last year, in the fall time, from someone who, um, a friend of theirs had, given them my information and said, hey, she does this programming, she can help you. So I actually had a good 45-minute phone call with a mom whose daughter was struggling with, some bullying at her gymnastics, um, team gym, and just kind of walking through, some advice that I had for her, but also just being a source of, um, a place for her to vent and to speak, and to, for me just to listen. And that's something that I personally really take from the work that I do, is learning to be more of an active listener. And that is hard because I think also as women, we try to fix things. We're fixers, whether that's in, romantic relationships or friendships. Like, we just, everything has to be fixed. And I think what I'm learning from this is that sometimes people just want to be heard. And they, and again, I said this earlier, I don't have all of the answers, but if I can just be a resource, a safe place for someone to just talk and vent, and kind of, maybe we'll collaborate and brainstorm and come to some good advice or feedback. I'm happy to do that as well.
I think that's great. I think that it's so interesting when I have this opportunity to speak with women who are doing such amazing things in the community and they're pushing out this positivity to others, where you point this passion to, where this originated from, and if you could even elaborate on that to say and share, did you always feel this confident in order to teach confidence?
The short answer to that is no. I learned through therapy that I was wonderful at masking, and just put on this brave face, and, came off as this very extroverted and confident person. But I think internally I was still struggling with a lot of things, uh subconsciously, right? Like, there's a lot of things that we just push down and hide away, because that is what kept us safe, right? So I think growing up, I look back and I say, I was very outgoing, and I was, maybe what people perceive to be as confident, but I think internally I was struggling with a lot of things, and, a lot of body image issues. And so that to me is, part of the motivation behind the work that I do, because I always tell people I need this work as much as someone else does, right? Like, it helps me in my journey to practice positive affirmations, to practice the body acceptance tools that I teach as well. To get out there and connect with other women, and build community. I felt like for a large part of my adulthood, especially after I started my business, that I was alone on an island, and I just felt like I was suffering and struggling alone. And there was few people that I could turn to that I felt like could relate to me. But if I just would have been open and honest with the public, with my forum of, Instagram, Facebook, and, even, the fitness groups that I used to work out with, you know, I know that I would have been supported. I know that I would have felt a bigger sense of community. I just never opened my mouth and shared. And so that's also something that I've learned, especially over the last couple years, is when we allow ourselves to be open and to be vulnerable with people. I know it's scary, but more often than not, we're met with support and love and acceptance. And that is what a lot of people need nowadays, is kind of centered around those things. So I I think I've definitely within the last couple years focused more on creating these workshops and this programming um as a way to help others, but also to help me in my own personal journey. And so in doing that work, also paired with really intense, deep therapy. It's I go to a therapist and receive EMDR therapy, and I'm gonna look up
That's
what
the
that stands.
tapping, right? Am I
It's the
accurate?
tapping, yes. So I don't want to butcher the acronym. Our world is filled with acronyms.
Mhm.
So it is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So some therapists do use tapping. Um, I do my appointments virtually, and so my therapist pulls up a screen. It's a gray background with a blue ball, and the blue ball just bounces back and forth. And so you just follow it with your eyes, and it's a way of activating both sides of your brain. Um, there's been a couple celebrities that have kind of talked about EMDR. It's not a super well-known form of therapy, but it is a form of psychotherapy designed to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's also a way to really ignite and pull up the subconscious. And again, those things that we've kind of stuffed down. Um, because again, that was our coping mechanism. That was what we did to feel safe. But I've been doing that EMDR therapy for it will be, well, I guess it was 2 years in January. So January 2023, I started EMDR, and I take the summers off because the kids are home from school, and it's hard to get yourself in a frame of mind to sit for an hour and do that type of therapy and then go be mom.
Right.
So I really just lean into more of the talk therapy in the summertime. So um but yeah, that to me has been really crucial in my journey as well. And something that I never would have considered, but within that first initial meeting with my therapist, she was like, "Yeah, I'm trained in EMDR and I think you could really benefit from it." So it's like, "Okay, I'll give it a try." Uh, and then went to that first session, and I texted a friend who had tried it as well, and I was like, "I can't do this. Like, this is too hard." And she was like, "I couldn't either. Like, I gave up." And so I was really battling with myself going, she talked so much about the benefits of it and how it, accelerated the results that you could see from therapy. And so I was really interested in that, but I thought, man, this is hard. This is like you have to go back
Mhm.
and you have to uncover and you have to confront. And there was stuff that like I didn't even realize I was doing in my adult life that had such a basis from childhood and the interactions that I had. And so it's been really eye-opening, and I talk about it often because it has been such a tool in my toolbox. And
I'm
that,
so glad
even
you brought that up. I
have you learned or researched or experienced EMDR?
I'm familiar with the MDR. I'm so excited you brought it up because in these podcast episodes where I'm interviewing women, therapy often comes up as someone's tool, but we haven't really dug into what the experience of their therapy was. And I
Hmm.
think it's important to share things like that because I was just having a conversation with a friend yesterday who said that she really feels that her family member needs to see a grief counselor, but they have such a fear of seeing a counselor or a therapist because one, they've never done it, so they have this story in their head of what it could be. She thinks that her fear is wrapped around the therapist telling her how she should feel or what she should do. And I think it's important for people out there to know one, you can change your therapist. You can find a therapist that works for you, that you mesh. But two, in my experience with my own personal therapy, and you can speak to this too, the best therapists that I have ever have are the ones who are just asking me questions. And I'm coming to the realization on my own, like, holy crap, just like you said, this actually goes back to when I was a little girl. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, how eye-opening those things are. So thank you for bringing up the EMDR. I think it's cool for people to kind of have a better understanding, and maybe that'll help their process of trying it. But to your point, it is hard. I think people need to look at it like working out. It's the hardest part is psyching yourself up to get there.
Yes.
Just show up. And you can feel tired afterwards, but it's like a muscle. You're constantly working and you're getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and the main purpose of EMDR, at least in the way that I've experienced or the way that I use it, is is essentially overcoming the negative beliefs that we have about ourselves.
Hmm.
And working through different targets, and a lot of those targets, for me, for example, something that I had to work through was this idea of I am worthy of success. And so much of that was centered around the fact that I felt like I couldn't hack it in the corporate world. I'd gone to grad school and started a job. A year later, I was let go from that job. They had a restructure and I was let go. I was the junior person on the team. And then I started another corporate job, and then again, it just it wasn't it wasn't working for me. I am just not the type of person that thrives in a 9 to 5 desk environment, and I felt like there was a lot of patriarchy and men that weren't supporting me as a woman, as a mom, and so you know I resigned from that job, and so I truly felt that at no point in my business any accomplishments or accolades would be good enough because I couldn't hack it in the corporate world. And that was the belief that I held with me. And I've been in business almost 9 years, so for a long time. And, that's just an example of, being able to really sit with that negativity and sit with those experiences and put yourself back in that time and work through it. When you're sitting in an EMDR session and the ball's going back and forth or you're feeling the taps in your hands, you know you just let your mind go to where it needs to go, and you say things that come out and they may not even be you know, related to what you started thinking about at the beginning. Like it just goes, and your therapist kind of acts as this guide and does ask the questions back to you and help you, get to a point where you feel less, you know, uh strong, like you don't feel as strongly about the negative belief as you do as the positive beliefs. The goal is to have no disruption whenever whenever you think about that. You're supposed to, get to a point where like you really do believe this positive belief and you've overcome. And so that is just like one of the targets that I work through. Uh, and that was even that's and I the reason I bring that up because even though there were things from childhood that I worked through, there are situations and traumas that you go through as an adult that maybe aren't even that far off, right? They could even be, 6 months prior or, 6 years prior, but it's still worth exploring and working through it because you do carry stuff with you. You hold on to it. And whether you're aware of it or not, it exists and it holds you back from being the best version of yourself going forward.
I really appreciate you bringing up even a specific thing you were trying to work through in therapy because absolutely therapy is an amazing tool if you've been through some sort of traumatic event, but there's so many other things in life that there's this great tool like therapy that can help you work through. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there who just continue to shove those feelings down, like you said. Just to go back, you said that you worked through feeling worthy to have success. I mean, how many people out there? It's probably easier to come up with someone who doesn't feel that way, right?
Right. So there's
So,
some level or degree of it. Yeah.
yeah. So I would say to anyone listening who's on the fence, or even more so to those people who are totally against the idea, to be open to it. It's a great tool. It doesn't mean that you've lost your mind and you're crazy. Like it's just a great tool to help you through having the skills to work through things better in the future.
Right. Exactly. And the last thing that I'll mention in kind of what I want to mention as well is that even if you're doing EMDR or talk therapy or anything, it's just the the experience, the journey is very fluid, right? There's no finish line. Like I don't get a certificate of completion, after X number of years, right? Like at some point I do believe my therapist will say, "Okay, I think, perhaps we go down to um more time in between our sessions or lean into talk therapy versus EMDR." But you know there are times when things can come up. I mean, life happens. There's going to be you know times in life where the negativity is heavy. You experience grief or loss. You experience quote unquote failures. um you're going to be triggered as time goes on. And so it's it's understanding that you as a person like are never fully healed. That is, I think that is something that we hear a lot, but I really do believe that you're never truly healed because you're always going to be met with situations in life that are difficult. And so it's really about flexing those muscles, that muscle memory, and pulling those tools out of the tool belt and being
Yeah.
able to use them. And that's how you can measure, whether it's working for you or not.
Yeah. I think also your therapist and your counselor is such a non-biased mirror and can help you see things in yourself where friends are great, but you pick your friends and you can easily pick friends or go to friends to talk to them about something that, I mean, subconsciously, they're just going to tell you that you're right. And how are you ever going to grow from that?
Right.
I mean, sometimes you're lucky enough to have a friend that'll just be completely honest with you, but a therapist and a counselor is a great tool to really see yourself and see what's going on to be able to improve.
Yeah. Yeah. The act of being challenged, I think,
Right.
is helpful, right? Like it does you no good to constantly be told that you're right or
Mhm.
you're doing all of the right things, because you're not. And I think my therapist and I have built a really um a really good foundation with that. She can look at me and know when I'm keeping something and not sharing. And that feels really good because I wanted that. I wanted someone who was kind, but also challenged me and, made me do the work. Because again, like you said, it's like working out. It's hard at first. You get better, but it definitely you still feel the burn
And
after each time.
oh yeah.
So
And I
one
think
thing,
like you had mentioned timing your appointments, to work with being able to be a mom. I know I learned the hard way of making a morning weekday appointment, and it was like work the rest of the day was so hard. So I would be mindful of picking your time, maybe when you don't have anything important to do afterwards, because you feel just tired,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
you bounce back.
for sure. Yeah. And that's what the R in EMDR really stands for, is reprocessing, because I think you deal with a lot of things in session, and then the time in between appointments is for that reprocessing, and things will come up and you will feel, you know, like you are again pulling things that you just had no idea existed, and kind of going through. And so it's interesting to see what kind of comes up in the time afterwards as well. So it's a really amazing tool, and I'm happy to be a resource for anyone who is interested in it or, wants to learn more. I'm based in Pennsylvania, and so I don't know if the therapists that I go to offer, nationwide coverage, but it's certainly worth the time to do some research in your area and find if there are some trauma certified or EMDR certified therapists that can help.
Yeah, I think that's great. You had mentioned, again, going back to something you worked through, feeling worthy to have success, and now you are in this place where you're teaching those skills to other people. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about your journey on how you went from feeling that way to now teaching that skill.
It's I think it's kind of it's interesting to for me to kind of wrap it up in a concise way. Um, but I think for me, I look at myself as a guide. I mentioned that my therapist is a guide for me, and so now I feel like I have done enough of the work that I can guide others. And, the way that I coach and the way that I, mentor through my programming, is that I want to inspire you, I want to motivate you, but there's not kind of a one size fits all approach for everyone. I see that often in business coaching and, marketing online, where it's like you have to do these things to be successful. You have to follow this process and, learn from this guru and take this course. And it's like, I think that's great. That's an option, but it's not the only way. And so I never want to position myself as someone who says, this was my journey, this is what worked for me, and this is what's going to work for you. Because that is just not reality. And so I really take the approach of, again, this is what I experienced. This is what my journey was like. Yours is going to be completely different, but I am going to offer you some guidance and some, tools and the accountability um, that hopefully will help you. I feel like for me, I want to be the kickstart for a lot of people. I want to be the fire under their ass that gets them started, because then I can say, okay, here's where I think you should go with this. Here are the resources that I think you should, look into and be a part of. Um, and again, leaning into that active listening and just being there for someone. Um, and that's kind of the approach that I take with my programming. And I think that's definitely different than a lot of business coaches, life coaches. Um, I I just feel like that is what feels good to me. And what I would have wanted if I was able to work with a coach or a mentor when I was kind of going through those really tough times. Um, because I think also too, for me personally, I miss independent, like I like being in control of things and I like making decisions. And so for me, I think it's really hard to feel like I have to do it this way. and I want it to be more open-ended and just say like, these are the options. This is what we can work through. Here's what I recommend. But let's see where it goes, just so that it gives them a little, the clients and the attendees of the workshop a little bit more control in their life. Um, because again, at the end of the day, we're getting back, the main goal is to have that self-confidence and that sense of self and be able to kind of drive the bus on their own. I'll be there again, walking alongside of you, but um, you know, you have to you have to do the work and you have to um, get to a place where you can manage on your own.
And what resonates with me, you sharing that, is saying, there's maybe not one size fits all because everybody's different. Everybody needs different things. And I know you put a big emphasis on active listening. When you're listening to these women, would you say there's an overarching theme with lack of confidence where it's lacking both in the workplace at home, or do you see people where they struggle in one place but not the other and somehow can't bring it to the other space?
Yeah, I would say that typically women lack confidence personally, and it does affect their workplace performance or the way that they show up in business. And the reason that I say that is because, we live in a time of visibility, right? Like you can't hide anymore. You have to be active, like whether you are a working professional, 9 to 5, corporate girly, or you have your own business, you have to have a presence online. You should have a presence within the community and working in person with people. Um, you know, I think last year was really popular with those like faceless accounts on Instagram. And
Mhm.
I just like, I cringed a little bit because I'm like, you are preaching that you against everything that I preach, which is that you have to show up and be visible. You have to put yourself out there. Um, but I do believe that that is why you know, women especially are struggling because it is such a time of visibility. And a lot of women just don't feel comfortable in themselves. And, a lot of it comes back to, unfortunately, they don't like the way that they look. And that's how I can summarize, a multitude of body image issues and how it shows up professionally because you do have to put yourself out there and you can't hide. And so just in having conversations with me and doing the work that I've done as a branding photographer, that's kind of this this overarching theme and what I think back to and reference whenever I create my programming because it's so centered there. And it's like once you can really work on and develop a level of body acceptance, that confidence builds, that self-worth builds, and you're able to show up in a better way professionally. I've seen it with you, Jess, specifically when I don't want to be too frank, but when you resigned from your job and you started, exploring new avenues, like, working with your husband's business and also creating this bold branding as well, um, I saw a spark, that wasn't there before. And, I think that was really wonderful for me to see because it- it's it's very it's very noticeable when you can see a woman go through the process and kind of, I call it like finding your inner glow. Like my handle on Instagram is Glow with Goss Boss because I think that it just exists in every woman. We just have to do the work. We have to go through it to to bring that out and find that. But it is very noticeable when a woman is able to do that. And I think it translates easily between, who you are personally to who you are professionally as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. For me, it's, you could certainly say it can be situational, but the shift that, and you're not the only person who said that to me, that they feel like I have a different glow since that change. But it's really a mindset change, and it goes back to being able to shift, for me, shift my perspective on things, set personal boundaries, give myself the time to self-reflect and be able to make those decisions for myself is where I think I was able to be more passionate and excited and celebrate things and live in a more positive space. Um, I think that all women do struggle with body issues, but I know specifically you do work on a lot of body positivity, and I'm curious to know what you share with women on they're in a process, right? Like they know they want to work on something for their own personal health and maybe their physical appearance. How do you help them be okay with the phase that they are in right now? And I mean, I guess in reality, that goes back to even a mental phase, not just physical. How do you get them to be confident
Yeah.
when they're not where they want to be yet?
Yeah, I think the first step is identifying what their goal is, because you mentioned the term body positivity, and I take a different stance on that term because I believe that it was, created, and it's marketed as a positive thing. But I can see where it could be harmful to some women to align with that particular term, because it's it was created with the idea of, loving your body and all of its quote unquote perceived flaws, and kind of like giving the middle finger to society and saying, I love myself and I may not look like what a societal standard of beauty is, but I love it. Emphasis being on the love. And the reason that I use more of the terms of body acceptance is because um, going from a point of, for a lot of women, hatred of certain aspects of their body to loving it unconditionally is a big jump. And so I think, the first step is identifying that goal and saying, what feels good to me? For some women, that may be the goal, may be that love, that unconditional love, that body positivity. Um, for most, I think it's probably closer to the idea of body acceptance, which is saying, I may not love my body, but I'm going to care for it. I'm going to respect it. And I'm going to, get to a place of um, feeling good, Body confidence is not so much about the way that you look, it's about the way that you feel about the way that you look. And so I think there's a big distinction there, because it's all about, again, that sense of self and like, how do you feel in your body? So what I encourage, women to move towards is more of body acceptance. There's also another segment called body neutral, which is just like, again, just very like middle of the road, like don't love it, don't hate it. I'm here. This is what you get. And, again, leaning into more of the, caring for and respecting your body. We want to, for me, the way that I approach things is always leaning into um chasing health, right? And this idea of metabolic health and what can we be doing to not only feel good in our bodies, but also care and respect them, and making sure that we're eating well, whatever that means to us. Again, I'm not a dietitian, nutritionist. It's going to be different for everyone. But finding out, what it is that makes you feel good. Um, And then, also something else that I encourage women to do is to uh, surround themselves with, people that support them, but also leaning into more of the self-love. And I think that's really important, um, finding some things that you already love about yourself that maybe aren't about your body at all. Maybe again, that is a big jump to identify something that you love about your body, but there's something you love about yourself. Whether it's, a characteristic of you being a kind person, a caring person, whether you think you're funny and you just have the best jokes, whether it's your ambition, if you are a go-getter at work, there has to be something that you love about yourself overall. And so I really encourage women, I've coined it lean into the love. And so when those negative thoughts start to creep up about your body and the body image, issues that you may be struggling with, lean into the things that you love about yourself. Because again, it's a big jump to turn a negative into a positive. But if you can find something you already love and focus on that, it will start to change your mindset and shift that narrative that is centered around your body.
I love that. That's great advice. Would you be willing to share what you love about yourself? What's your go-to proud thing about yourself?
Yeah, I think if I'm because people ask me, they do ask me sometimes, if I still struggle with body image or if I have bad body image days, and the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, who
Again, because
doesn't?
yeah, this journey is fluid, and again, I'm not completely healed. I don't think that exists. So yes, I do have bad body image days. Um, but something that I do love about myself, I love my hair. I have to give my dad credit for that because he had nice, thick, dark hair, and so I love my hair. And I've recently stopped coloring my hair, and so my grays, my natural gray highlights are coming out, and so I do love that. And I also love, a non-body characteristic that I love about myself is that I'm a connector, and I love connecting people. If there is something that you need, I probably have a referral or someone that I can send your way that can help you. I love connecting people and, helping build relationships with people because, again, I feel like that is something that will benefit everyone. So that's also something that I love about myself.
Oh, I love that. Those are
What
great
about you,
ones.
Jess? What do you love about yourself?
I know. I was trying to think while you were saying this because I'm like, this is such great advice when you're just kind of like having a day.
Hmm.
Um, I would say I love that I'm a creative person and I love to not just create something in terms of, a piece of artwork or something along those lines, but I like to create environments and cultivate spaces for people and pull people together where they feel good. So I guess I love creativity in all mediums, and I love that I feel proud that I am able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see you as definitely like a very visual person and playing with different colors and textures and creating that full environment, right? Like that's why I'm so excited for your in-person event because I just feel like the women that are going are going to be um so honored to be in a space that you've created, and I'm super jealous.
I know we talked about earlier before this, so we need to get together and I want to go to one of your workshops for sure. I would love to bring my daughter.
Yeah. Or I could come to Florida.
Yeah. Get out of the snow.
Get out of the snow. I'm like, I look up every so often while we're recording and I see the snowflakes and I'm just like, I love you, Pittsburgh, but I am done. I'm ready
Yeah.
for I'm a summer girl, so I'm ready for the sunshine and the warmth and but I
Anytime.
love it. Yeah.
Come on down. I wanted to go back to something that you touched on to one, put a little bit of an asterisk mark on this because you had mentioned when we were talking about health and body, finding different diets that work for you and feel good. And I really kind of wanted to emphasize that because I've had a lot of conversations over the years, a lot more so recently with women of my friends of mine, and it's people are doing wildly different things and it's there's so much conflicting information out there. It can be really hard to navigate what seems like the healthy choice. You know, you've got people preaching about how meat is inflammatory, and then you've got other people saying you need to take in all this protein and you know, olive oil, I guess, is good or bad some days. It's really hard. And speaking with friends, I've had people who have lived a vegetarian life for years, and then they've realized it didn't make them feel very well, and now they're shifting to more of a carnivore diet and they feel great, or vice versa. So
Hmm.
I just wanted to touch on that a little bit more and just tell people to listen to their body. I mean, people you can get great advice, but you have to kind of take things with a grain of salt because I don't think it's a one size fits all for people.
No. No, and that's definitely something that I emphasize too, when talking about feeling good um, is that it is so personalized, right? It is so customized, and not everything is going to work for everyone. And as women, I think for me, like the older that I'm getting, I am becoming more in tune with my body, and I am giving myself permission to feel that way. Whereas I think growing up, there was a lack of permission to kind of make decisions on your own and understand what's going on with my body. After my husband and I got married, and it took us a couple years to get pregnant with my son, I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility. And, I I know now, like that ship has sailed. We are not having any more kids, but I know now, like I am so in tune with my body that I believe I could get pregnant if I wanted to, because for me personally, my ovulation is stronger every other month. And so
Hmm.
I know that now at 37 years old. At 26, when we were starting to try for our family, I had no idea. I just thought, this is how it works. It should work. Why is it not working? Um, but I just didn't give myself permission to really learn about and become in tune with my body. Um, and so again, I think that comes with age. I think that comes with maturity. I think that comes with again, giving yourself permission. So I'm here to say to anyone listening, I'm giving you permission. Start making notes about what feels good in your body, whether that is centered around um, nutrition and food, or exercise and movement. Um, it's not, like you said, it's not a one size fits all. So that's a wonderful point to make and to emphasize, um, because we are so bombarded with messaging left and right, especially on social media, and it's it's just not it's just not helpful.
Yeah, I think it's you have to give yourself grace to do some trial and erroring of things to figure out what works for you. And I can imagine that that process alone can affect your confidence. Do you have any suggestion on how to continue to remain confident when you are trying things and they're not working? You know, you had mentioned struggling with fertility. Like, how do you continue to hold on to that confidence for yourself in those moments?
I think that was a really hard time for me. But what I would have said to myself then, or would say to someone now, is lean into community, find people other women that you can be around, that you can feel supported by. And I think I think friend group is great, but look outside of friend group too. Find other women who um, are maybe going through similar things, because that camaraderie and that community can be really, really helpful, because I think your confidence just dips in moments like that. And when you don't have a strong foundation to lean on, when you don't have a strong sense of self, um, you kind of need to have those people nearby to pull you up. And your friends and your partner, like obviously they're helpful, but it is nice to be around someone who's like, I'm walking the same path as you. I get it. I hear you. I see you. And I just want to acknowledge you. And I think that is something that I was definitely missing for the majority of my adulthood and would have been really, really beneficial.
Yeah, gosh, that's really good advice because I think there's probably a lot of people out there who can feel really alone, even though they have a lot of friends and family around them, because they may feel misunderstood from what they're going through. And I mean, I've gone through a couple of just like weird medical things that I felt like nobody really understood. And I know I've found community just by finding like a Facebook group that's focused on
Hmm.
that. And like you said, sort of getting that reassurance, but then hearing some tips and knowledge from other people, like just putting yourself in spaces outside of your normal circle can be really beneficial.
Yeah. And they exist. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of research, a little bit of investigation, or even, referrals from within your current network, to find the right group, the right people. But it does exist, and it definitely feels a lot better kind of navigating different situations when you have the support around you. So yeah, I have a three-part framework to creating confidence in your life, and that is number one, feeling good, number two, feeling supported, and number three, feeling loved. And so when you have those three components, it definitely makes a big difference and adds a boost of confidence to your life for sure.
Can you share any tips for people who maybe their circle, maybe their support group that they have, they're starting to outgrow and they're afraid to leave that circle because they may feel like they don't have any support at all. Because that is important, I think, important in your path to confidence. What would you tell someone who's starting to outgrow their circle and outgrow their support group?
It's kind of like dating. Um, and getting out there and doing the research and trying and finding new groups, but it's like dating because you do have to go and experience and you know try things on, see if it fits. I can think of this even as a business owner, going to new networking groups and going to a few that felt kind of good, but just like it wasn't the right fit. Like there was just something a little off, and I wasn't sure what it was. And then finally finding, for me, um, within the last 6 months, a really solid networking group and community as an entrepreneur, that has made a world of difference. So I think it's just, you know, getting yourself out there um and dating these different groups and kind of seeing what fits, because um it might be promoted as, this wonderful thing and you think, well, I fit within this, but then you go and it's just not a good fit. Like, why force it?
Yeah.
There's so many other fish out there in the sea, right? So whether that is, professional group or a personal group, a therapist, that's another thing that like you have to find the right fit for. Um, be okay with the idea of dating and trying things on. And, it might not be a first time thing either. You may have to go to a couple different events or be on for a couple months, but you'll you'll figure out, what's the best fit and what's really going to help you. I think shortly after that.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think that's at the forefront of my mind because when people are actively working on growing as a person, or maybe they're trying to start their own business, I think that's when confidence can kind of dip a little bit because people are used to the old you
Hmm.
and not who you are trying to become. And it's this weird little limbo area. And I think that there can be some fear or, fear of judgment or insecurity and whatever, tools that you can help provide to just keep that confidence a little bit stronger, just to like power you through those moments.
Yeah, people are used to this idea of who you are, and so when you change, um, whether it's negative or positive, we all go through, different times in our lives, but yeah, when you change, it's hard for people because they're used to this, like they're comfortable. That's why the cliche or the saying exists, like growth or, you know, um, yeah, true growth like happens outside of your comfort zone because like when you're comfortable, no one's growing, no one's moving, no one's changing. Um, and that's not ideal, right? Like again, just leaning into the fluidity of life um and confidence and, just everything, knowing that life is gonna life and it's just getting to a point where you do have those tools and you're able to kind of navigate and get through. Um, and also understanding that, yeah, there's good days and there's bad days. Um, but leaning into some, daily practices and mindset shifts that can keep you from staying in that negative spot. And I think that's the goal.
So I know we've talked a lot about mindset and confidence, but I just keep going back to the health portion because I think that's so intertwined with our mental health. Can you share with me how if health has been an impact in your life or maybe in people close to you that's been part of this journey?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that my goal is always chasing health and what it is that is working for me specifically, and making sure I'm eating well and moving my body and um taking time for myself, practicing self-care, praying. I don't meditate, but that can certainly be incorporated as well. I find it really hard to shut my mouth and stop talking a lot. So meditation is hard. I do enjoy a good sound bath though. I'll
Yes.
totally lay there in Savasana and listen to those bowls. But I'm probably thinking of a million different things. So, um, but yeah, I guess, for me, my experience of chasing this idea of health was accelerated shortly after my best friend, who was 39 years old at the time. Her name was Heather. She passed away in October of 2022. And it was a moment in time where it really became this idea of things happen for you and not to you. And I really took that loss and that grief and really channeled it into what can I do in my life to become a more healthy person? Um, and healthy overall, not only in the physical health, but in the mental health as well. And so shortly after she passed, I started EMDR therapy. I thought, my dad had previously passed away in 2017, and so the way that I coped with his death, the way that I grieved, was not good. And so I took my 2 weeks of solitude. And I just was thinking of this the other night. I spent 2 weeks watching reruns of The Real Housewives of Atlanta. And I know you're a Bravo girly. And let me just tell you, those ladies in Atlanta pulled me through some of the darkest moments of my life. And I want to thank all of them.
Just
You
like
know,
thank Nene Leaks. Like
Yes. Oh, Nene. Yeah, and they were the reruns. It's going to be hard to watch the new season without some of the OGs there. But yeah, so it was, I took those couple weeks and you know, came through the darkness, and I decided I can't approach grief in the same way that I did when my dad passed away. And so I started going to therapy, and I you know, made some changes in my lifestyle, and I decided that again I was going to do some research and some trial and error into what I was going to fuel my body with that made me feel good. I worked with a nutrition and fitness coach for about a year and learned about weight training and moving my body in a way that was all about caring for it and respecting it, not so much punishing it or with having weight loss as the goal. And so I really, really changed a lot in that first year after Heather passed away. And it really created a strong foundation for me going forward. And it's something that I really focus on because, yeah, it's cliche, but life is so short. I would have never imagined. I mean, she was 3 months postpartum with her third child. She suffered a heart attack, which was later diagnosed as SCAD, spontaneous coronary artery dissection. And so, this type of heart attack specifically, there's a tear around the heart, and it is that first letter or first word, spontaneous. It happens to the healthiest of women, most without family history of heart disease. And, it is just a moment where life is just, it's so short, right? And again, that's cliche. We hear that all the time, but like,
so true though.
it's so true. And it's one of those holy shit moments like why her? Why so young? Um and I really took that as an opportunity to reassess the way that I was living my life in terms of my physical health and my mental health, and really doing what I could do to live a healthier life and to live, a longer life. Because my dad also passed away from a heart attack. He was 58. Um, so again, relatively young. And I took those as, opportunities to learn and grow and to really use as motivation to chase health and what that means for me. And I'm by no means perfect. But at least now I think I have a better sense you know, of what I can be doing. Um, Whereas before it was just kind of like I just I was living a I was living an unhealthy life, you know? And I wasn't focused on myself. I didn't pour into myself the way that I do now. Um, and now I can say that I do that because of her. And also, when I look at my children and say like, God could take me tomorrow, but at least I know that I'm doing everything that I can to be here as long as I can. And so that's really important to me too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know personally how hard it can be to work through loss and grief and how hard it is to just accept that there is nothing that we can do to change the past and what's happened. And it's really remarkable and special when someone can move through that process and create something even more beautiful out of it. You're doing so much more for yourself because of what happened. You're doing so much for other people because of what happened. That's part of your journey, which is it's so remarkable. Um, and I know I'm a little bit familiar with this story you had shared with me previously about your friend. Um, I wanted to, if you may, share a little bit about what happened to her medically a little bit more and the process, because there was a lesson there at the end that you shared with me that I think it's important to share with people listening.
Yeah, so um, the backstory of Heather was she was 3 months postpartum. She a week prior had experienced a cardiac issue and was in the hospital for a few days, released and supposed to um, be put on a heart monitor because again, she was a seemingly healthy 39-year-old woman. So with no family history. And so why was she experiencing a cardiac issue, a heart attack diagnosis? So, she went home and um, within a week, that next Thursday, she experienced a major cardiac arrest and unfortunately did not survive. It was through the surgery after that cardiac arrest, that heart attack, that they did find a tear. And so that is where the diagnosis of SCAD came from because, she kind of fit within those um, parameters of who, SCAD uh, targets, I guess, if you will. Um, Women age 38 to 45, healthy. A lot of times it is in that postpartum period. Um, 3 months out is rare. They actually believe that more SCAD episodes happen closer to the 1 to 2 week out postpartum. Um, but yeah, so she passed. So she had her cardiac arrest on Thursday, and then by Sunday she had passed. And you know, I um I was there with her family on Sunday in the hospital, in the cardiac section. Um, Sat all day and just prayed and uh, cried, you know, embraced each other, just really couldn't even believe, like fathom that this was happening. And it was shocking to us, those close to her, and then also to the community. She was a fellow business owner. She has a dance studio, here in Pittsburgh, and her sister and husband have taken over with the operations of that. But she, also lived a life of empowering young girls and helping them with their confidence through dance. And she was inspiring in her own right. And so it was very shocking to everyone. I think the lesson in which you were referring to is, you know, for us as women, learning to advocate for ourselves and, you know, getting in tune with our bodies, recognizing what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and going into a medical situation, whether it's an emergency room, whether it's a specialist appointment or a regular doctor's appointment, and saying, this isn't right. I have what I believe could be this. Let's do the test. You have to become your biggest advocate in the medical community, um, because unfortunately for her and probably for a lot of other women, um, she was written off as this could never happen. Um, and it did, and it took her life. And it's a situation where it could have been prevented. And I think that's the hardest thing that I myself and her family struggle with, you know, is um is the idea that, you know, more could have been done. And so I think the lesson to take from this um is learning to advocate for yourself and asking again and again and again until you find the right answer and until you feel comfortable with the treatment plan going forward. Um, you I think for me it's like I can't live my life filled with regrets. But what I can do now is use my voice to spread awareness and to um, bring more information to the table because her sister hosted last year a 5K in her memory, and the day before, we were invited um, to hear from a doctor from the Mayo Clinic who does extensive research on SCAD. There is a nonprofit called SCAD Research Inc., and they do extensive research on this diagnosis. And to hear from the doctor, and it was very eye-opening, and it was, you know, just very interesting to learn all about this because it's something that I didn't know anything about, and I fall within those parameters. I raised my hand and said, I'm 37 years old. Like, what can I do to prevent this? And the best the doctor could say to me was just to live a healthy lifestyle. They are working as much as they can to figure out what are the connections between this specific heart attack and the victims, the people who are suffering from it, but they just don't have the answers yet. And so that's a hard pill to swallow too, is that there's no definitive answers except that you just have to do your best to be as healthy as you can. Um, I will probably start to do some more research for myself as time goes on because I do have a family history. My dad did pass away from a heart attack. My paternal or maternal grandfather passed away from heart disease. So there is family history for me, but for a lot of, the people who have suffered SCAD heart attacks, there isn't. There is no connection. So just trying to spread the word and do the research and, hope that no one else has to lose someone they care about.
Yeah. Thank you again for sharing. I know that can be difficult to share those things, but I think that it's such a beautiful bookend to this episode because it just ties back to the fact that every woman should feel confident to understand her own body and mind health and then to advocate for that. And life is short, and why not live it the best way you possibly can be in that healthy body and mind and live a happy, positive life? So I think that this again goes back to the beautiful work that you're doing for so many people out there. And I'm sure that your friend is just smiling down on you and that, she's part of this journey with you.
Oh yeah, I know she is. Like I visit I visit her grave often, and I sit in those moments and I connect with her and talk to her and thank her for supporting me. Like I just always say like I have the best guardian angels. Like I would have preferred that my dad and my best friend still be with me earthside, but like knowing that I have this support around me is it makes me feel really good, and it does give me the motivation on days when I start to question myself and go, is this, what am I doing? This is really hard. And I've been an entrepreneur for almost 9 years. And so it's in through 2020 and beyond has been the hardest years of it, obviously. Um, so so knowing that I have some spiritual support, like it makes me feel really, really special.
Well, I hope you never give up because I'm states away and I can see all the amazing things that you do. I think it's amazing.
Well,
Do you
thank you.
want to
I
work with
appreciate it.
Kristen Goss?
Well,
Who
thank you
wouldn't?
so much
She helps women
for
reclaim
coming
radical
today and
acceptance of their
sharing
bodies and minds
your
to find
journey
their
and
inner
some
glow.
tactical tips for
Follow
other
her on
women to take
Instagram
with
at
them
Glow
on
with
their
Goss
own
Boss,
personal journey.
G L
I
O
think that
W
confidence is
W I T
probably
H
one
G
of the
O
biggest
S
struggles that
S
a lot of
B
women
O
have,
S
and it's
S.
such an important
Are you a woman in
conversation,
need
and to
of
find
branding
strength
or
and community
headshots?
to have that
Follow her
is
at
just a wonderful first step.
gossboss_photo or
Well, thank
go
you.
to bio.site
Thanks so
forward
much for
slash
having me.
gossboss.
And like I said before, I'm a resource should anyone have any questions. And I am just so honored and blessed to be doing this work. And I hope to be doing it for a long time.
Did this episode of Bold Foundations inspire you? Or can you relate? Maybe you have your own story to tell. Whether you want to share with me privately or you would like to be a guest on the podcast, reach out by going to boldfoundations.my.canva.site or follow us on Instagram at bold_foundations. And don't forget to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening.